Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Enterprise AI Show. I'm your host, Brian Gracely, and today we're going to do another AI and cloud news of the month. Brandon Whichard's going to join us here in a little bit. We're going to dig into kind of a recap of the World Cup. We're going to dig into cloud earnings from the hyperscalers. We're going to dig into AI agents and harnesses that are breaking out and doing all sorts of bad, nefarious Leroy Jenkins things. We're going to dive into chips. We're going to dive into security. We're going to even dive into a little bit of old school, cloud stuff and, what's going on with VMware. So lots and lots of stuff this week, actually, for this cloud news of the month. Stick around. We'll get to it right after the break. Today's show is sponsored by Nasuni. There's a growing gap in AI right now between what's possible in theory and what successfully works at scale inside an enterprise. The difference comes down to unstructured file data. Many AI initiatives struggle because the file data they depend on is scattered, unstructured, and disconnected from where and how work actually happens. Nasuni changes that. It brings your unstructured file data into a single, secure foundation so AI, both generative and agentic, can access it with the context, governance, and performance it needs in production. Bring AI to where your unstructured data lives. See what it takes to activate your data for AI and request a demo at nasuni.com/AI. And we're back. And folks, it's been a month, so that means that it is time for us to do everybody's favorite AI and cloud news of the month. And we are excited to have world famous, world class Brandon Whichard back with us. Brandon, how are you, man? How are things in Texas? How have things been over the last month?
Things have been fantastic. The only answer when you ask somebody that question in the summer in Texas is hot. It's extremely hot. We're enjoying it. We're burning up, but we're having tons of fun, if you will, following all the AI news, which we have plenty to talk about this month.
Yeah, we do. We do. Before we get into the news, because there's obviously, like you said, lots to talk about, we can do one of two things. Did you pay attention? Were you watching the World Cup? I think you were.
Absolutely. Watched it all. Watched as many games and matches, as they say, as possible.
Did you feel like you learned any new corruption things that you could take forward until the next 4 years? I feel like FIFA, was like, hey, we were really corrupt. The world the people who pay attention to soccer know we're corrupt. The US now knows we're corrupt. And now they're trying this new thing that seems to upset everybody, where they're like, we were really corrupt as a quote unquote nonprofit, even though we're, everybody who's on the board is making tons of money. And now they're like, now we want to be a for-profit. They're taking the OpenAI model. We want to be a for-profit and we want to start taking money from private equity. So I feel like they're just like, you know what, being corrupt in the dark is not good enough. Let's be corrupt out in public, because that seems to be perfectly fine these days.
Yeah, I think it was, first of all, I loved watching all the games, all the matches. And I think one of the things I learned about was, like, if you were trying to be like evil, kind of Dr. Evil type person, I can't remember, I'm not going to say his name right. It's like Giovanni, whatever, the head of FIFA.
Right.
I thought it was amazing how he always wore the black suit, black tie, and they framed him in every, and somehow he went to like every match, like he flew between them. And they always framed him as like a Dr. Evil looking character, like about midway through the first period or first half. Yeah. And then midway through the second half, I was like, okay, obviously he's told them to do that, right? I mean, that's the only reason you get that FaceTime. I was like, okay, you seem like you're Dr. Evil, but the tournament was really fun. I think it was generally well received in the United States. I actually happened to be in Mexico a little bit during it. They had a good time. There was they had some games there, and that was really good. So you're like, out of like a pretty excellent tournament, right? What do? You immediately go for more, right? So I think that's the private equity thing. But I think, to your point, I mean, maybe this is like what we need to learn about corruption is, like, he seems to have gone so far, everybody is mad, right? Yeah. Every, if you will, regional soccer association has now voted against this, like Europe, the United States, or the South America, the Americas. Right. So I'm like, either he has like an extra hand to play here, right? He's like, it doesn't matter what you people think. I still have control of this because he has some type of weird power. Or I think he could potentially have gone too far. I think this may be the moment where they're like, you just went too far and you're going to be ousted. And of course, he came in under the auspices of like cleaning up, because the last group was even more corrupt. So it kind of leads me to believe that, like, I think he'll be out, and probably there'll be a new corrupt leader very shortly. That's my prediction of what's going to happen.
Yeah. No, I think that was good. I think like you said, once you get to the pure Dr. Evil point, you just have to double down on that, because you're like, I mean, yeah, you that's your brand. You've established it. You might as well see, just how high you can get in that thing. Because if they're gonna nab you and somehow put you in jail, but I don't think they are. There's no like FIFA jail. There's no. FIFA, I feel like don't they have like their own? They're based out of Switzerland, so they're basically like they don't live by any laws. It's
well,
awesome.
I also think it's funny too. It's like you had this huge success. It's like just take a month off, like just go on vacation for a month. Don't do anything, lay it low, right? But it's like no. As soon as this is done, now I'm going to sell this. I'm going to sell this prize piece of a nonprofit to like we won't even get into who it is, but let's just call it polarizing political figures involved. And it's just like, no, people are pissed. They don't want to do it. So we'll see. We'll see if his corruption done. We'll see if he can continue on or not. So, and in 4 years, we'll all be watching, or actually even next year, we'll all be watching the World Cup with Women's World Cup.
That's right. That's right. Do you want to, it's been 3 months now since we did our AI draft. Do you want to do any sort of review of that? Do you want to do any gloating over your picks? Or
absolutely, I feel like I'm winning, so I feel like we should go over this for the next 40 minutes. So we'll do a quick thing. So your number one pick was Google, mine was Anthropic. I think it's clearly let's
just go through. We had 8
clearly
picks.
I'm winning on that one. Would anyone disagree with that? Like Google, they're doing some good stuff, but they don't have a leading frontier model.
Right.
They're basically, if you will, had to lease their computing capacity to Anthropic. So I feel like hands down, I won that one.
Yeah. Okay. Even though Google did make an astronomical amount of money.
Sure. They made a lot of money, but that's sort of like, but they got that money from Anthropic. So I'm taking the win on that one.
That's right.
And number 2 was, you said major AI centric IPO in 2026. I don't know. Do you want to claim SpaceX as that? Or is that?
I could, but I feel like SpaceX sort of performed like some of the poor rockets. It took off a little bit. They tried to manipulate the hell out of the market. It's now been down. I don't feel great about that.
You're going to wait on that one. We'll check in on that one. You still have Anthropic and OpenAI coming later this year, I think. So, okay, we'll to be decided on that one. I took NVIDIA. I think that's still a solid pick.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
It's doing well there. So that one, I'm going to give myself maybe moderate. We're just going to we're not going to grade that one.
We'll call that 2 up. Yeah, that's fine.
All right. What do you think about this one? You picked third pick was Amazon. I picked Broadcom. How do you score that one?
Well, I feel like for all of the, kind of negative Amazon AI news, they did still announce that they're making a ton of money on their cloud. Mm-hmm. They're back to making a lot of money in their cloud, which again is mostly serving other people's models. You picked Broadcom. I feel like the only news out of Broadcom lately has been that they're losing VMware customers because they're getting sued. So, I think even if it's just by a nose, I think I win that one.
Okay, that's true. That's true. I forgot about it. I almost forget that Broadcom owns VMware when we talk about it from AI. It's like, oh yeah, that one as well.
There's that part too. Yeah.
We'll stop here at 4. We'll just say you made the prediction that a company has more agents than employees. Possibly.
I don't feel like that's been a dominant theme.
Yeah, hard to know on that one. Maybe not. Yeah. I took OpenAI as a frontier model, so again, I feel like they're doing well. They're still out there.
I don't know about that one though. Has there been any good news about OpenAI lately?
Well, maybe that's a good. So maybe that's our first topic this week. So
there you go.
OpenAI essentially, I don't know how to say it. All their executives mostly left for different reasons. For like. Some of it was health reasons. Some of it was more time with their family. Some people were fired. There seemed to be a little bit of everything. Everyone reports to Greg Brockman now, I think, other than Sam Altman. Right. So I think while it was very messy, I do think they mostly have the house in order for at least going on IPO. I think because I kind of read this sort of like, we're not going to do all these crazy projects that we had before. Right. We're just building an enterprise coding agent and we have to figure out the consumer business. So I don't know if I want to say this was good strategy. I guess it was sort of like proper course correction. Like what, I don't know. How do you think of it?
Yeah, it still feels like it's a weird business because on one hand you've got, what I think I read, they've crossed over 1 billion people now using ChatGPT on a weekly or a monthly basis. So you have this massive consumer business, which is incredibly expensive. You're really not monetizing it terribly well. And then your other strategy is let's try and be Anthropic, right? Like let's try and basically just copy Anthropic's model in the enterprise, which again, being the second is not necessarily a bad thing to be. It's weird that they have such a big sort of cost, this anchor of, which sounds crazy. They have 1 billion users of something that they're losing money on, and they don't seem to want to monetize that in any way. Like I haven't read an article about their advertising business in forever. I do get the random, ads in ChatGPT when I use it, but yeah, it's a weird business. It's definitely going through we've taken, they have to be the weirdest, we've taken nearly $200 billion and we're not really sure we have minimum viable product other than the product that we don't really want to monetize. So
I just want to read you, as you were going over the advertising business, in the show notes here, there's an article. Everyone can read the whole thing if they want, but I'm going to just read you one line from it to give you a little bit more data on your advertising. It says, quote, OpenAI is on pace to undershoot its own 5-year ad revenue projections by a whopping 90%. So that's bad, Brian. That's really bad. That's real bad. So, I kind of feel like the way to say this is the consumer business that, and I think this goes back to the leadership changes. Many of the leaders that departed for a variety of reasons had a more consumer-based ad background. I don't think that's breaking any news.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're missing it by 90%, I think it's clear. It's not even so much I would say those leaders were bad. It was like this market doesn't exist in the way that they thought of it was. There's no getting around this. Like you don't miss by 90% and be like, what we need is another sales team. It's like, no, you don't have anything. That's just, that gulf is so massive. So to your point, and it is the ultimate jujitsu move that Anthropic has pulled, and it's mostly by luck. It's like, it turns out having the giant consumer business is what you were just saying before. It's a huge drag because you have to pay for it, and it's not really profitable. Here, Anthropic and Mistral and all these other are mostly focused on the enterprise, and it seems like that's where the money is. So, as someone that took Anthropic in the draft, I hope they turn it around here. And I need Greg Brockman to be like, we got to stop working on this ads. We got to work on stuff that's profitable, which I think is what they're trying to do. Remains to be seen if they'll be successful, but I think that's what's happening.
Right. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if a year from now, we were reading the Gartner Magic Quadrant of, Codex versus Claude, kind of like whatever that bucket falls into of like AI for productivity or something like that. And those two are, up and to the right. But that wouldn't surprise me at all. It's just, how does OpenAI not keep doing other businesses? Like, for example, they announced, ChatGPT for health, and they're like, just upload all your health data to us, which sure, that's lots of people will do that. Sure. Well, and I'm sure there was a certain amount of them. Like, I'm sure the person who is like ChatGPT for, counseling essentially, or like, I want, ChatGPT for therapists. They're like, I don't think you guys realized, like, ChatGPT is used for therapy, cheating on homework, asking if I can avoid using a financial planner, stuff like emails, be a trip planner. And they're like, why wouldn't we do health? People are already telling us all kinds of stuff. And somebody was probably like, okay, I'll let you try that for like a month, and then we're going to look at the bill and see how much we lose, and then we'll decide if we're going to keep it or not.
Yeah, that's probably
true.
I
feel like there's probably still a certain amount of like the old Sam Y Combinator that's still floating around inside of OpenAI, because it's like, guys, we have 1 billion people worth of data coming in here. Like, figure out which applications should have come out of this thing.
Well, but this is something you've mentioned on several shows, right? I think you often say something like, the quote unquote first agentic application hasn't been, if you will, discovered, right? Something that could only invent. So kind of think of like Facebook. No one was predicting Facebook at the beginning of the internet. That sort of like evolved, or Uber or something along those lines. So you could, to make a very diplomatic way to say, is that, Sam Altman is he's with you, Brian. He believes, he's like, we got to keep trying to figure out what the native agentic application is going to be, because that's like, worth untold trillions if we can hit it, right? Meanwhile, Anthropic and all these other companies are like, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to make the enterprise a little bit more efficient, and people are going to keep buying those tokens. So you could probably say that. And of course, it's been announced and widely, I don't know, I would say panned, but I think people rightfully have questions. It seems like their first hardware product, of course, they're coming out with Johnny Ive, is the speaker. They're going to have the home speaker, the Alexa or whatever you want to call it. And I think it seems underwhelming. I don't feel like anyone is like, what I need is another smart speaker for my house, but maybe we're wrong, and so of course Sam Altman's like FOMO, right? It's like, he's like, it's coming. It's going to be super great. And of course, what's even more fun about that is Apple's now suing like 400 of their employees for all like leaving. So which is if you're Sam Altman, I guess you just get up in the morning, like, which problem am I going to work on? We either have to invent what's going to be the new application for all of AI, or we have to hire 500 lawyers to represent all of our employees who are being sued by Apple for trade secrets.
Well, it's one of those things where, like, let's say you're sitting there and you're like, okay, we want to be in the consumer space. If we're going to be in the consumer space, we got to have some sort of hardware. We're probably not going to build a phone, or maybe we're going to build a phone. I don't know. And somebody goes like, hey, why don't we start with a speaker? And you're like, okay, well, that's not, that's not a radical idea. It's a pretty easy hardware form factor and so forth. And then you kind of wonder if somebody was in the room going like, hey, do you know how we create stickiness for people using our stuff? We keep track of everything they're doing. Well, in the home, you don't ask it that many things, or at least like it's not your natural behavior to be like, hey, OpenAI, or hey, ChatGPT, hey, Chat, but like when you're doing work and you're just jamming data down its throat and it's building up memory, and then you're like, hey, turn that into a skill. Okay, cool. Now I've got more memory. Like, you would think that unless the thing is listening to you all the time, which they probably don't want to do, maybe they're already doing, but you don't want it to think that it's doing that. You sort of are like, you're not going to get as much data to create a memory, to create a personalization as you think you are. And you would have thought after, 10 years of Alexa and 15 years of Siri, people would be like, oh, I already know how much people use that stuff. Like, there's tons of information about that. And none of those have been like, people will be like, oh man, that thing knows me. It's
no,
awesome.
Not at all. In fact, quite the opposite. It's like, I've been talking to this thing for 10 years and it still doesn't understand like the simplest words. Right. So I don't know. I guess they, unfortunately or fortunately for them, they just don't have, this is probably something that needs to be quietly built in a lab and tried out in a quiet way to see if it works. But unfortunately, everyone's going to be watching. And of course, Sam Altman and Johnny Ive brought this on themselves. Of course, they had the famous coffee shop video in San Francisco that goes, I mean, honestly, you're like parody or reality. You're like, I don't know. Is that an episode of Silicon Valley or did that really happen? So, I mean, they kind of brought it on themselves. It'll be fun to watch though. It'll be something for us fun to talk about later this year. Well, one of us will have to buy one and we'll have to give it a review. Does it work? That's right. Or they could just send us one. They should probably send even
each
better.
Us one.
We're always down for that.
What's your take on this thing that's been going on the last, I don't know, it feels like a few weeks, but maybe it's been going on since Mythos came out. The idea of like, our new model is so powerful, it's so scary. So, first it was Mythos and like, hey, it's so powerful and scary for security. Only a few people can have it. Now it seems to be the new thing is, oh my gosh, our agents or our model, we were doing testing and it broke out of the sandbox and started hacking into stuff. Like, are you buying into any of this that like it really is scary stuff and it just sort of has Leroy Jenkins, kind of DNA, or do you look at these as entirely marketing events just to sort of scare enough people to be like, okay, what's the anecdote? What's the thing that I can use to protect myself against you big bad guys?
Yeah, I guess I look at it kind of in the middle. Like, I don't think they're purely marketing events. I don't think there's anyone like thinking like, oh, I really want the OpenAI model to break out and like try to get answers from Hugging Face as a good thing. I think it's just more like, I don't know what to call it, like research, or just this is how it goes with technology. It's like you put it out there and you see what happens. And of course, like when something happens, everyone can just draw a million different opinions from the same event. They can either say, this is the end of the world. This is the beginning of Skynet. It's all going to take over. Right. Or people will say, no, this is just an example of like how insecure things always were. Right. And this is how it always was. Like, a friend of mine runs a group of CISOs and he was telling me about, and I was like, what are they using? What do they care about AI? He says, all they care about is, if you will, making sure there are guardrails around there so it doesn't get to data that is not, that it shouldn't get to. And then he's like, yeah, like it turns out a lot of these AIs are like finding all this corporate information, like everybody's salaries like available on some SharePoint or something. And I was telling him, I was like, well, that's not new. Like it was always there. Like the only thing that's new here was just the fact that like there was something smart to figure out what it was, but like maybe one person knew where that was before. And it's so it's like, to me, it's like, so there's like, oh, AI is changing everything. We have to change everything. It's like, no, not really. It's like, you just had a lot of insecure data before that you didn't know about. And now you are starting to know about it. So why don't you go put out, and again, like one answer could be a better AI, certainly there's plenty of security vendors would say like, well, we can use AI to combat it. So I just kind of look at it like, this is just where it is. It's like, and of course, like, and I just think anyone that predicts like when they know if it's going to get so smart that it's like out smarter than all of us and doing something bad, it's like, it's almost like an impossible question to answer. It's like, all I know is like, it's like, sure, maybe if we were like, if we were truly a command and control society, we could probably be like, hey, let's slow down and think about it more. But it's just like, when has humanity ever done that? It's like, there's no way anything's going to stop. So it's like, every week we just have to see what happens and then course correct as appropriate. What do you think?
Right. Yeah. It's interesting to me because, I mean, there have been things this feels like it's one of these things where it's like, we're going to get very close to a line of, is this thing, does it sort of fit in the domain of like, hey, we should just let it see what happens in the marketplace. And, like there might be some things that fall down, but there's gonna be a lot of good out of it. Or does it cross enough over the line to be like, oh no, this is really kind of the equivalent of like plutonium and we really don't need it. Just people just doing random experiments with it. Like we kind of, the government's kind of go, no. Like it needs to live in these like specialized labs, or it needs to, it needs to, have the equivalent of like, some big Faraday cage around it or something like that. And I feel like right now, because so many of these things sort of fall into, right now they're sort of U.S. companies, and so right now the U.S. government's pretty laissez-faire about being like, well, if you guys can make some money, we don't really care what the downsides of it are.
Right.
But a year from now, 2 years from now, or something like that, the government stance might change, and all of a sudden it'll be like, nope, we're going to treat that stuff like nuclear material, and we may not let some of these things kind of just figure out everything out in the open where there can be, because again, I feel like the thing about it is, we hear the Darios or we hear the Sams, it's mostly Dario being like, yeah, I mean, it is something that could, completely eat a hole in your brain and destroy the planet tomorrow. But, it could also do cool stuff like invent math that, we've never heard of before. And for some reason, we're all just like, okay, I guess it's cool. It's helping me cheat on my homework. Like, I feel like if anybody spoke like that, 10 years ago, it would have been like, okay, cool. Well, let's go, put a box around that thing. And yeah, I don't know how long, like society is going to kind of put up with it. It feels like right now, there's enough people who are like, well, I'm figuring out a way to make money about it, or I invested in it, so I don't want to shut it down. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to best explain it. Like we keep seeing these things happen. They tell us they're terrible things. And then they're like, well, the cool thing is like tomorrow there's going to be a new news cycle. So you won't even talk about it anymore. So don't worry about it.
I will say this though, if there was a CMO for all of AI, it's like at some point it needs like a big win, right? To what you said, like some societal level problem, like maybe it's like curing a disease or like coming up with a new energy source or something, like cracking some problem that all of us collectively are like, yeah, that is great. The thing finally did this one. And it's like, I think if it got one or two of those, I guess two is almost, if it got something like everyone can be like, it cured this disease and X amount of people are now living better lives and living longer, would be a huge win. Because right now I feel like so many of the benefits are diffused. It's like, we talk about them on the show all the time. Like, oh, it helped me write this proposal or it helped me do this. But that's a very small thing. Whereas if everyone could just point to like, yeah, it did this thing and we all universally agreed that was great, and that would be a huge win. And so that's, I guess if you're the CMO, you're like, I need a big winning case study. And I don't need, we have too many hugging face breaches. We don't have like scientific, because like Google was good at this. They'd be like, for a while, right? They're like, I know what it was. The protein folding. That's probably the biggest, but again, it's kind of nerdy biology wise. It's like, you have to like really understand like why that's so important, but that's probably the closest to be like, that was a real scientific breakthrough. So they probably need the Google brain team to be like, okay, what else you guys got in the lab here? What other biology stuff you got in there that we can roll out? Yeah.
I mean, there is a great irony that like, I mean, you couldn't name the CMO of any of these companies, right? The CMO is essentially Dario or Sam or Elon or whoever. So you're like, okay, so there's not going to be a CMO of AI because these guys are all like, no, I'm going to tell you what it is. But somehow they all talk about how it's going to do amazing things. Like it's just going to do amazing things. It's going to change the world. It's going to, Elon's now talking point is like, look, there's going to be so much abundance that comes out of AI. You guys aren't even going to just save for retirement. Like it's just going to be, things flowing out of whatever. And you go, okay, that's all cool. That's all cool. But hang on, let me just do a quick sort of once over of your business. So your business is build these models, take as much data from everybody as possible, make them really smart about a lot of things, except the only thing that you've really been able to prove is that you can convince people that they should just fire people. Like you haven't solved any economic problems. You haven't solved any societal problems. You haven't solved any medical problems. You haven't solved any economic problems. But other than learning how to, okay, the system could suggest that you fire people because it now has these skills. And you're just kind of like, so what exactly does this thing do again?
Well, it's back to what you said before. It's like the messengers are just the wrong people. They always they think of like everything as like subtraction. Even what you said before, even like, look at all these people we don't need to do. It's like, that's actually not what gets a whole bunch of people excited. Telling a whole bunch of people that they don't need to go to work is not motivating versus like, I'm going to tell you how you can spend more time with your kids, or this is going to help educate your children so they learn faster and they're smarter, or that you live longer, or like it's easier to lose weight, or it's easier to make, like people want those kinds of, it's like a Scott Galloway pitch, right? Like, it's like, what is it? It's like the head, the heart, and the libido, right? That's his thing. It's like, they don't ever think in those terms. They're always just like, look at this thing I just removed. And someone's like, that was my job. I mean, like, I'm not excited by that.
Yeah. I mean, even for one of the things that it's really good at, which is like helping your kids cheat on their homework, it's not even good at that because like, and you guys pointed out on your show this week, like, it'll take a copy and paste from something that has white text that has the professor trying to get you caught. It's not even smart enough to be like, hey dude, just heads up. Your professor's trying to get you caught. Like, I know you're cheating. Maybe let's just 50-50 this thing. It's not even good at that. So I don't know.
Well, have it built, that's, you're bringing on. It's like, it should almost be like detect the white text and be like, listen, I know you're trying to cheat here. First, let me tell you, if you don't read this, you're going to fail. Right. But two, it's like, since we're here, right? Why don't we instead of me just writing it, why don't you type in some stuff? Right. I'll give you some ideas. Right. Let's work together on your essay. And then, you can send it in. It's almost like that's what you want. Be like, hey, it's like, okay, I'll cheat for you if you want. Or like, you're here. Like, why don't we spend 30-40 minutes? Like, let's just brainstorm some stuff. Let's see if we can help you write a little bit better. I mean, that in itself would be kind of nice. Like, call it like suggested tutor mode, right? It's like, I know you're doing it. Let's be realistic. I'll give you a few pointers. You can still get a good grade.
Right. Yeah. I mean, every other computer program either does one of two things. It gives you a pop-up when something is bad, or, like you forgot something, or like a web form just won't let you continue. It just doesn't, it turns red and it goes, no, fill in this thing. So yeah. No, they're not good at either one of those things. So let's see what else happened this month. So it seems to me like all the hyperclouds. So Microsoft, whether it's Meta now trying to get in the hypercloud business, XAI is trying to be in the hypercloud business. Like, it feels like they're all kind of giving up. I mean, Google's still kind of on the fence, right? Because they're doing really well. Mm-hmm. Probably a lot of it comes because they're hosting Anthropic stuff, but they're also, they keep chugging along. They're good, they're bad, they're good, they're bad on the Gemini stuff. But it feels like everybody else is just sort of kind of, I don't want to say they've given up on being in the model business, but they're basically like, no, I'm just going to host it. Like, the cost of training is too high. It's better off to just be the hoster of this, and then I can do the thing where we start playing the financial games of like building data centers and not keeping them on our books and stuff like that. But it does feel like this month in particular, the last couple of months, the hyperclouds who were trying to do their own thing with AI, I've just been like, I can't do both. I can't put all the CapEx into building these things, buying all these chips, and spending all the money on the things. And it does feel like that's shaking itself out. It basically is like, there's going to be a couple of frontier models. There's going to be a whole bunch of Chinese ones that have distilled them. And then we're just going to go back to sort of the hyperclouds who just host everything.
I think that's exactly right. And I think it reminds me a lot of the first Gartner infrastructure as a service Magic Quadrant a long time ago, where there was like 30 vendors on there. And then like next year there was 15. Next year was like, well, there's only really 3 or 4 left. And I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, I think AWS and Microsoft are probably the best examples. I think they have the money, and I think they have the will to build a frontier model. I don't think they have the talent, is what we've kind of learned here. It's like, because there was a note here in this week's in this set of stories, right? AWS shut down their essentially their frontier model lab. They bought a company back in San Francisco, and that was going to be I think it was like Nova was called, and they've essentially shut it down. And I think what it comes down to is just like there's just the amount of talent that can actually do this at scale. I mean, I feel like all these people basically know each other and can sit in a room, right? When it really comes down to it, and so. In some ways, it's just a forced reality. It's like, Microsoft did the same thing. They bought, I can't remember the name of it. It was like not Chat, but it was like the personality one, right? And they brought that back, and they haven't done it either. So at some point, the brutal reality just hits you. It's like, we can't do it. And so, of course, that was another thing that happened this month is then suddenly everyone became a fan of open weight models. Well, of course you're a fan of the open weight model. If you don't have your own model, you're we're just going to use the best of breed kind of thing. And I think, and we'll see what happens. This is part of our ongoing bets. It's like, well, in the interim, be the picks and shovels, just sell compute, right? Sell raw compute or raw GPU make as much money as you can in the hopes that Anthropic and OpenAI and others don't, if you will, subsume you, right? But to me, it's like, what else could you possibly do? That's the only decision they can make.
Well, and it does feel like, I mean, to your point, it feels like, we saw, what was it? It was like the founder of Thinking Machines who had been previously at probably had been at OpenAI, been at Anthropic, right? Is now going back to OpenAI. And I feel like that pattern is, okay, there's a very finite amount of them. They all know who they are. At some point, one of them or a bunch of them think, well, we really should be in charge. So let's go do something else. They go somewhere else. They realize, oh no, this is still a game of whoever has the most money, the biggest GPU farm and the most data wins. I can't start from scratch, and for whatever reason, it seems like the ones who have some association with OpenAI and Anthropic, when they leave, I don't know if they're starting from scratch or if they make they distill it and then they can't make them as good as the Chinese models or something like that. That part I don't totally understand. But I think at some point they're all probably living within 50 miles of each other, 50 feet of each other, whatever. And like their spouse is like, what are you doing? Like, just go back to where you were. Like, they're going to pay you a ton of money. Like, why are you doing this thing? Just give up on it. Work 16 hours a day instead of working 20 hours a day or whatever it is. And then, cash out $50 million so we can have a beach house. And I feel like we're going to get to a point like we did with every single big domain that had an open source thing. It was like, there's going to be one big proprietary thing and there's going to be a whole ton of open source variants that you'll, open source, open weight, whatever, that people will also have to pick from. And we're probably still a little ways from that because we still haven't figured out who's going to be like the Oracle database of these things. It's probably going to be one of the two. It's probably going to be OpenAI or Anthropic. And then it's going to be like, okay, how will the open weight thing shake out? Because, instead of having like 25 different open databases, you're going to have 16 Chinese ones, which is going to have its own political connotation. And then you're going to have like 8 or 5 or whatever distilled US ones, quote unquote, or open ones or whatever. So, but I mean, I'm like, okay, it's now starting to look like the games that we've seen before. It's just a matter of like how long that's going to take. It's going to be probably a couple more years before that kind of finalizes itself.
I agree with all that. I think the only thing that could change it is like a new breakthrough. And so, maybe we'll talk about it next month. I guess Ilya Skutskover, his name I just said poorly. He's whatever, one of the people that's
he was the guy trying to get rid of Sam 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
And so everybody knows him. So his company, like I think it's called Super
Intelligence or something
Super Intelligence, Super Safe Intelligence or something like that.
Yeah.
So rumor is they're going to release their first whatever product or release something out of their lab sometime in the next month or two. So in theory, right? I mean, those are the kind of it's the kind of thing that's like, well, if attention is all you need, that white paper sort of marked the beginning of like this run. If he writes a new white paper or comes up with a new way to do these things, that could maybe break it open again, right? That could but in lieu of that, right, you're kind of, it's sort of like, do you have the smartest people and do you have the access to the most compute? And right now it's really just Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI doing that. And everyone else is sort of like, and it really, and you could say the whole industry, it's not just even the big companies. This is what we were talking kind of in the green room before this. Is so many of us are sort of like, well, why don't we all get into being a forward deployed engineer or an AI solutions architect or a forward deployed product? It's like it just feels like the whole industry is like, we should all learn this and like start doing projects. And it's like But we're all, if you will, we're all downstream of that. Like if you just go look at like what it takes to build an agent or build a skill, it's like, okay, like most of us can do that part, right? None of us, or very few of us can be like, you know what I need to do is rewrite the entire training model. And I was like, none of us kind of, I guess the group is so small that's doing that work. It's like, you just kind of we all just have to watch them and be like, you guys come up with anything new? Anything else we should learn?
Yeah, no, I agree. Hey, you've been around for security for a long time, at least in the middle of it or loosely adjacent to it. You became sort of enamored with, this zero CVE thing that was going on a couple of years ago. ChainGuard got into it, and then Wiz got into it, and Red Hat did a thing, and so on and so forth. It feels like zero CVE sort of 2.0 is upon us. Red Hat and IBM announced Lightwell, ChainGuard announced Athena, Microsoft and Cisco both announced these like security-centric LLM models. What's your overall take on this space, which is, yes, we should be able to use AI models to find vulnerabilities faster. Hey, throw an agent at your code and go, hey, how would it break? Show me where the vulnerabilities are. Somebody could potentially patch them using AI, right? We're gonna get into a token game again of like, hey, how many can you patch? Do you patch the same things? But like the other part of this becomes, let's say somebody finds a vulnerability, fixes a vulnerability. Did you ever become sort of a fan of this idea of should I patch old stuff and just kind of, not have to be in the constant upgrading game? Or are you more in the, were you more in the idea of like, no, you should be sort of in this thing where you're just kind of always pulling the newest stuff and turning that into how you do operations?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say my opinion has changed over time. I think for a while I would say more like, hey, you just got to patch things like as soon as it comes out, run the new stuff, patch it as soon as you can. But as you kind of alluded to, kind of all these, call them like hardened containers or hardened platforms, whether it's ChainGuard or Red Hat or many of the others doing it. I do think with AI, the idea that you can build from scratch and, and actually like know, if you will, the history of every single artifact and where it came from and like, and maintain that, like that feels much more doable now than it even did maybe 3 years ago. Before I saw like, there's just too many packages. And there's no way to do it. But I think now I'm sort of along the lines more of like, it's probably more important that you have that, what they call it, like the S, the sort of like the full history, and that you know where you're building things are from. And and again, mostly I think for most people, you're outsourcing this to other vendors. Let those other vendors look at every patch that's coming in, and only when they've kind of gone through like a pretty rigorous policy do you put it in there. Because, I guess NPM is probably the biggest offender. It's just like, there's just too many things that people are sneaking into these packages, right?
Right.
And no one can look at it. So it almost makes it, if you will, a little, I mean, obviously you have to protect both ends, but I think it's almost to go, if you will, go a little slower to go faster, if that makes sense. It's sort of like, build from scratch, know what's going on, and look at every single one of these patches going into it. And again, the largest companies have been doing that for a long time. And I think, so now like, before, like only Google and Facebook were really doing that, and now all of us can take advantage of it. So I think it's generally a good thing. And I just think, I mean, this is like such a boring thing. No one wants to hear this. It's like, oh, well, we're just going to go through maybe a 3-year bump here where it's like AI has to go first, find all the obvious AI vulnerabilities. And then we have to go through a period of fixing all of those things. But at some point it plateaus, right? It's just like I said, it's like we were talking about before. It's like at some point you think your enterprise is secure because no one can find this data, even if it's available. But then someone else comes in and does it. And what do? You patch it, and like eventually it'll just work its way out. And of course, like I tell like people all the time, it's like all your data's already been stolen. You personally, it's like your social security number and email and like it's already out there. Like, and then I just ask them, are you using a password manager? And people are like, a lot of like normal people are like, no, I don't like those. I'm like, well, I mean, there's your answer. Like, what do you want me to tell you? It's like, if you don't want the solution, well, just, you'll be okay. Once in a while you get hacked. My sister-in-law just got hacked the other day. It's like, well, that's what happens. Life goes on. She'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's an interesting sort of trade-off because it's the, patch the old stuff. Obviously you're sort of just extending your technical debt, but at the same time, it's like, well, I mean, we're not in the business of, running super efficient infrastructure. We're in the business of banking or building pharmaceuticals. And so like we have all these old Java applications and so forth. And then the flip side of it is like, oh, well, you could go to the other end of the spectrum and just be constantly, it was the old thing, like repair, repave, just rebuild all the time. And then it's like, okay, well, yeah, but again, is that's a hard skill to find. I thought it was funny. I was talking to a few people this week and they were like, well, now that there's these AI things, these services and so forth, or, the open source community is going to start having access to these things, like a couple of years from now, we just won't have any bugs anymore. And I was like, that is definitely not happening. There's no chance we're going to get to a point like a couple of years from now where it's like, yep, all the software free of bugs.
That's right. We should at least have the obvious bugs should be gone, but we'll have plenty of new ones that we haven't. And I will say this though, one thing we won't go into too much detail today, but like if you haven't seen it, it's a little bit of maybe a long read, but the team that runs Bun, basically, the node, whatever packet utilities, let's just call it that, right? They are rewriting their entire application from a language I just forgot the name of into Rust.
Of course.
And I'm like calling this as like, I am really looking at this project as like, I don't know, almost like canary in the coal mine. Like, and then basically the short story is like what would have taken like 2 years and 5 developers took them, I don't know, 2 weeks and $200,000 in token credits. And it's like, this is something I guess because I've been around it so much in my career, it's like so many people, like you even mentioned it, it's like, oh, we have all these old Java apps or this old mainframe apps. So many people have talked about modernizing apps, but they don't really do it. And so I'm like, that's one thing I'm like, maybe it could actually happen. Maybe the apps could actually get rewritten with AI. So that's one to watch if you want to be on the optimistic side. It's like maybe one day here in the United States, we won't have the stupid ACH system that takes 3 days to clear a check. And we too could have real-time cash transfers if only we could get off the mainframe. So that's what I'm always wondering. Is this it? Is this the moment? So I'm really excited to see what happens there.
Might be. You always talk about like some math class that you took that you're like, if I had paid attention to it, like it would be, what was the math class or the computer science class that at some point said, you need to be the person that stands up and says, you know what, we should rewrite this whole thing in Rust. Because I feel like at some point, every open source project, there's been somebody who's like, you know what, if we rewrote this in Rust, all problems go away. I want to know what class that was. That's
a good point. Well, it's kind of true. It's like all the joys of all the speed of C without all the problems with memory. But listen, before we go, Brian, I want to return to our roots, but even more your roots, because you're in this world a lot.
Yeah.
Our good friends at VMware, right? It's like feels like a decade ago, but just a few years ago, right? They announced everyone has to move to the subscriptions, made everyone mad. So we had 2 more stories this week come out of people migrating away. We had T-Mobile, of course, everybody knows T-Mobile, large telco here in the United States, and then Sheetz. I don't think any of our international listeners will know that Sheetz is like what do we call it, like a convenience store, bodega.
Sheetz is if you were an international person and you were following any of the international people that came to the United States for the World Cup and they were talking about like giant cups of soda with free refills, like they might have been talking about Buc-ee's, but they probably were at a Sheetz. Sheetz is like this gigantic, car, it's a gas station basically, but it's a gas station that has a giant convenience store attached to it. Yeah. They apparently moved.
Well, we learned from the article that Sheetz, the store, now this is just in the store. Each store has 12 to 14 virtual machines running VMware's vSphere and Storage Magic's SVHCI. So we got to get the Sheetz person on and be like, what the hell is going on in this store? It's like, I'm just buying a soda.
This is the equivalent. This is the equivalent of like when Chick-fil-A was like, we're running Kubernetes in the store.
I don't know.
Everybody's like, what?
I am fascinated. Like, what are they doing in there? But let's put that aside and assume they know how to run their business and we don't know how hard it is to deliver sodas. But what is your take? I know you live in this world like kind of day to day. Do you feel like, because my standing thing is this like, well, everyone says they're going to move, but when the bill comes, they're just eventually like, we're just going to pay for it. But kind of picking up on our last subject here was like, maybe they are having a little bit more success migrating away, or have the bills just gotten so big that people are like, no, we can't take it.
I think it basically boils down to a couple of things. I think if you were, if you weren't one of the VMware customers, because again, they sort of cut off the bottom 80% of their customers and just said, too small, if you guys go away, whatever. And then the top 80%, the top 20%, it was basically like, we're definitely giving you a bigger bill and we're hoping that you're really kind of locked into our software. And so my guess is, the people that are publicly moving away are one of 2 people. Either one, they really love their legal department and they're like, oh, legal fight? Cool. Let's do this.
Let's go.
And number 2, Or number two, they're like, look, we really looked at it and we're not tied to all the different VMware stuff. Like we basically just use it for virtualization. We use somebody else for storage. We use Cisco for networking. Like we could move. Like it's not.
We can find another hypervisor. It's not that
just
hard.
the hypervisor, and so it's not a big deal. I think the ones that are going to stay and will stay forever are the ones who are like, yes, we use the full VMware stack. We're not changing, and so be it. And they're the ones who they've made some sort of decision, and they're gonna convince themselves every 3 years when they do a new re-up that they're like, okay, that'll be the last price upgrade. And it's like, no, you will have price upgrades forever now because you've explicitly told them I cannot ever leave you. It's like the mainframe. I mean, it's a wonderful business for VMware. I don't know whether it's a great situation or not for the customer, but they had an option. They chose to stick with it, so it probably does good things for them.
Well, nonetheless, I just want to reach out to the Sheets person, knowing nothing about any of your business. I'm going to listen. I think I can get you down to. I think we can get everything into 6 containers, and we can get rid of VMware. I think I don't know anything about what you're doing, but I've been to a lot of convenience stores. I've drank a lot of soda. I'm like, I think we can do it. Whatever your thing is like. We're going to get a couple of Docker containers in here and just a tiny, tiny bit of management, and we're going to get you going. It's going to be, I believe we can do it. I know we can do it. And at the end, we can all have a giant sandwich and a giant soda to celebrate.
There you go. Yeah. So if you're Sheets or Sheets adjacent, reach out to us, reach out to Brandon. And we'd love to have that conversation. So, all right, man, thank you for everything again this month. We will talk to you again next month. We'll see how the draft is going. Maybe things will change. Maybe you'll be up 7-0 at that point. We'll see. But thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for telling a friend. And we will talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening. Check us out at theenterpriseaishow.com for past shows, newsletters, and all things enterprise AI.